Que lo que, mi gente? Welcome to the Monoplaza F1 podcast. As always, I'm your host, Emi Bertre. And with me again is probably my favorite guest, is my brother, Elkyn. Hey, man, welcome back.
Back, baby. Thanks for having me.
Hey, so tonight, this evening, we're going to be talking about the Qatar Grand Prix, probably one of the most eventful, messiest. Oh my God, can the season just end race of the season? So, um, yeah, let me ask you what your thoughts on. But first and foremost, because I always do this, congratulations to Max Verstappen and Max Verstappen only. He got it done when no one thought he would, in spite of being demoted from a P1 to a P2. He found a way,
Mm,
willed himself. Yeah, I
mm.
can't go. Yeah, whatever. Congrats to Max.
Hey, man.
Congrats to Red Bull. So
Hey, someone had to give
yeah.
him the shout out. In the words of Kanye West, through the wire, baby. Through the wire.
All right, hey, so yeah, now that that's over with, what were your thoughts, general thoughts, before we really do a deep dive about the Qatar Grand Prix?
Here's how I know how much you don't care about the sprint races where you don't even mention it in the
Why?
intro.
That's not. It's not a
That's a,
real race. I don't care. The
and then,
the sprint.
and then
The sprint. Oh,
hey, the sprint races is pretty much the I'm just here so I don't get fined race. Everyone
hundred
just
percent.
the race feels weird. The afterwards when they present their little trophies, it feels weird. Everyone's like
Dog.
they
Dog.
had
No.
they had a homeboy from TikTok there. People didn't know how to and
Oh, you know, you saw
it was
George. George did the.
yeah,
What was the?
George did it. Yeah, George at least did it. But
Hey,
like
if
people were
anyone's
just
gonna know
like,
PR. No, you know what?
"Oh my
Here's the
gosh."
thing. I have always hated the sprints. It is what it is.
hmm
Um, but the sprints only count if my favorite driver wins. All right. Otherwise, yeah, whatever. It was a 19
Absolutely.
lap free practice session, so that's why I'm not
Oh my
mentioning it. So screw.
yeah, it was just like whoop, and then it was. Hey, I'll tell you this. It gave me one of the funniest moments. The awkward. Well, first of all, Lando's like, "Yeah, go ahead, Oscar. You get that sprint win." And then like Zach out here giving them a hug, take pictures, and then Lando with the most forced smile. He's like, and I was like, "Homeboy, this
Hey,
did not
do you
care."
think? Do you think that that was Lando saying like, "All right, dog, I gave you Brazil back. I don't owe you
Yeah,
nothing now."
honestly, that's what I felt, and I'm just like, really, a sprint race? That's what's
Well, I
gonna
mean,
count?
Oscar. Listen, Oscar had was told on team orders give Lando the position, swap positions. I was like, okay, a little too late to play a team game in Brazil, but sure.
Yeah.
But you saw like Oscar's face, by the way, after he, I guess, won the sprint, was given the sprint. He was like,
This guy did not. He was nonchalant. He was just like, "Hey, man, we're
nah, he was
here.
pissed.
Let's get to qualifying." But yeah, overall, weekend was good. I enjoy actually first race that I watched with our dad. I think it was his
Oh,
first
shuts
full
out.
race. I took the laptop over, put on some F1 TV. We watched it. I got to go through explaining to him some of the ins and outs, who to root for, and then young Emilio asked me who do I like, who am I rooting for, and I said Hamilton. So then he was like, I like Hamilton, and I was like,
Yes. Hey,
my boy, there we
train up
go.
a child. All right. Listen,
Yeah.
what the audience really wants to know, did Dad make it through the race without falling asleep? Actually, that's what I
Let me
wanted.
t-
Or did you?
let me tell you. Let me tell you. I almost lost him. I almost lost him.
Hey, was
He
bobbing
got me.
like?
No, he got me good. He was laid back on the couch because I put on the big TV. He put his head back, and I was like, I'm about to lose him. And he got me with one head bob, and then looked up on the TV and stayed awake. And I was like, oh, he faked me out. And I made a face. I was like,
Hey,
and then,
the big for those who don't know, if you don't have a Caribbean dad, good luck trying to get him to stay awake. If he sat on the couch, I
hey
want to know
man.
that he have his arms like this on the back of his head.
Oh yeah. But I did my job though. I kept them engaged. We talked
Hey, I
about the
appreciate you.
rules, what to look. I stood up. You should have seen me out. I went in teacher mode. I stood up next to the big TV and I
I'm
was
so
pointing
mad
out
at you.
like, all right, here's the HUD right here. Let's explain the different stuff. And he's like, oh, and then of course, hey, this was a great race as far as safety cars. because you got to explain all that.
uh,
But yeah, man,
or
overall,
lack thereof.
but
Yeah,
yeah, bummed out with the result of the race, but
sure.
I enjoyed watching it with him and Emilio. Emilio's first full race, may I add.
Hey, shouts out to F1 for bringing families together. All right.
There we go. Three
So
generations, baby.
the story of the weekend. Well, there's many. All right. So I'm gonna start with the first one. The first one being, obviously, uh, we saw that Max got pole, so he had the fastest car. But for whatever reason, George Russell felt that Max was driving dangerously, erratically. Now, granted, um, George obviously qualified P2 on merit. Cool, done. Uh, but then on the radio, and by the way, like I've always said this, I'll continue to say this. These drivers, they're feds, all of them, federales. All right, they're a
Mm.
bunch of narcs. All they do is tell on each other. That's annoying. It gets old. Like, hey, dog, tis race. So whatever. They're all narcs. Your fave, yes, he's a narc too. Okay, they're all feds, all of them. All right. So let me just get that off my chest. So George obviously goes, complains. The thing that was interesting about that was that George was on a cool down lap. He wasn't. It was a prep lap. He was getting ready to actually do his actual speed run, his actual lap. And then, of course, he said, Max slowed down in the apex. That wasn't good. Blah 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 blah. This, that, and the third. Um, yeah, and so obviously they ended up going to the stewards. Max is demoted one grid spot, which is really weird, for driving slow and impeding George. By the way, the thing that you should know is Qatar is one of the flattest countries on earth. So George could have seen him from a mile away. George was not going through an actual push lap. It was really weird. But the fallout from that is Max Verstappen getting spicy. I'm not going to give you the full quote because I don't actually remember, but essentially Max, and I'm paraphrasing, says, I've never seen somebody try to screw somebody else over that hard. Said George is one way in front of the camera. He's completely different when he's not in front of the camera. He's a fake. He's a diva. I'm clocking him. I don't respect him. Get the F out of my face. So basically, yeah. So let's start there. Thoughts on the beef that has been simmering for a long time? Yeah. What do you think?
This is the one time, I'll tell you, this is the one time I missed those sessions where they used to air this stuff as far as when you remember like how they would have the time where the drivers were able to ask questions or whatever, and
Mm-mm-mm.
they would have the cameras there, and that's when they all started like saying like, I know what you did, I know what you did. Oh, you're gonna talk about me? We're spilling tea right now. I'm gonna clock you, you, and everyone was saying stuff. I love when they showed that stuff, and this is where I wish I could have been in that room where they would have maybe shown a
Yeah,
little
but
bit. But I think I think the biggest thing is, and I'm sure Maximilian, we can only defend him so many times, but at the same time, some people try playing it off as like, oh, Max is feeling threatened. He did the same thing with Lando. He went out, but I think
mm,
like Max generally is the type of guy. He's like, hey, if you don't like me, act like you don't like me. Say it to my face when we're talking. Don't try to get buddy buddy with me. Don't try to get like, hey, it's okay. We're the best of friends, and then do this behind my back. He's like, if you
basically,
don't like me, just be upfront. I think that's one
yeah,
thing. Like he honestly like didn't mind about Lewis. Like Lewis and him with that 21 season, they're like, we're both competing super hard and we're gonna go at it and it's gonna be icy. And that's what it is because we're
S-
competing and going back and forth.
so I mean, yes, I would also add there's a reason obviously that they call George Russell PR 63. He's a public relations machine. Um, I totally understand. Like, hey, he's one way in front of the camera and another way in real life. I'm sure a lot of people are, but I think that I'm gonna say that a lot of fans of primarily Lewis Hamilton have known, I guess, or have clocked that George Russell is this way for a long time, and there's only so much that you can show before people just start to like. If you've been around enough fake people in your life, you just know, like, oh, okay, sure. But it felt like that was the fuel for Max. He said, regardless, whatever was going to happen, he was going to overtake George. Like that was the motivation that he needed. Blah 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 blah. This that and the third. And so I guess really the follow up question that I have: do you feel like, because I guess they had a moment before the drivers parade, so who knows, Drive to Survive, if we'll see that, probably 100% we'll see that, because last year's Drive to Survive or this year's Drive to Survive was whack. I think they did like 3 episodes on like
Hmm.
Nick DeBreeze and AlphaTauri or Visa Cash App 2 for 1, whatever that team is called. So for sure we'll see that in Drive to Survive. But my question back to you is like, do you feel like Max is alone and how he feels about George, or this is everyone on the paddock like, yeah, he really is like that.
I think there's probably several drivers. If you were to ask them, probably feel a certain way about it. I bet you if something happens in the drivers, like a steward, someone comes up to him and said like, "Hey, you did this or this happened," they would probably be like, "Hey, it was probably this guy." But at the same time, like you pointed out, these dudes do not back out from telling on each other. So that's the thing. I really wonder how much of this behavior goes on behind the scenes, because
Sure.
at the end of the day, I think it's one of those like I see George trying to get any type of competitive advantage.
Absolutely.
And of course, if he can get that P1, that pole
Yep.
position,
Yep.
he's going to go for it. And I see him just trying to play the game. It's just, I must say this, Max has shown he's one of the best at playing these mental games. He did not win 4 championships in a row for nothing, and that's the thing. Especially, it'll be interested to see next year. Let's just say Mercedes develops a car and Max, if Red Bull can give Max a decent car, we know Max is going to be up there. If he gets a decent
Sure.
car, he's going to be up
Sure.
there. And if someone like Mercedes can be like, hey, we want to push this, because I don't think George has ever been in that spot, and that's the thing. He's playing these
And
games where he's when he's in the back, and we'll see what happens.
see, I think George has kind of gotten a little bit of false confidence right now, right? So he's feeling like, and he did an interview with Sky Sports where he's like, "Who would have thought the boy from Blase Boom Blabity in his first year and Mercedes would beat, a 7-time world champion who had won the last 6 out of 7 Todd blah blah blah." And I was like, "Hey, pal, you got a little too much dip on your chip right now. Like, relax, because 2023 he didn't talk about that one. In 2024, I don't care what anybody says. It's my podcast. There's no way they're driving the same car. All right, and this evidence to me, it is evidence to me by Lewis's performance uh, in Vegas specifically, and the times he was putting in fast lap after fast lap after fast, right? All that. I don't think so. I don't think you do either, but I'll confirm this. I don't think, as much as George has that confidence that he's going to bring it to Max and he feels like he can beat Max, I don't think Mercedes is going to have a car next year. And the reason I believe that is because unless they pull like the ultimate con this year, last year, the year before last, for the last 3 years, they have no idea why the car does what it does. Right? I don't know if you remember. It used to be like, well, we're seeing something in the wind tunnel in the simulations, but it's not
Hmm.
correlating with what we're seeing on track. They have no idea. They have no idea why the car is fast when it rains and it's cold. They have no idea why the car is fast when it's cold. They have no idea how to make it consistent throughout, right? So if they couldn't figure out in 3 years, mm, I don't think it's gonna happen. So again, like, hey, shouts out to George for being confident. I don't think he is ready yet to face a Max Verstappen. I'm not saying never. I just, yeah. So again, final thought for me on that is like, I don't know. I don't think they are friends. I don't think they're going to be friends after this. I think George will try and say something funny when they inevitably ask him about it in Abu Dhabi, right? But yeah, it's pretty much like whatever. Since Baku last year, they probably already didn't like each other anyway. So whatever. I mean, I don't know. Final thoughts on that? Will they break bread and call it peace, or is that a wrap?
I think it'll be a if they do, it'll be a PR thing. Just like how Max had his thoughts and said his thing, when him and Lando were getting close in the championship chase.
Sure.
I think it's going to be that. But I honestly think like on the grid, Max doesn't consider George to be one of the guys he's like I'm close with.
Which, by the way, I feel like the only person Max really feels is actually your rival is Lewis Hamilton. And don't take my word for it. Take Max Verstappen's word for it, where he says he still got
Hmm.
it. He probably will never lose it. This year he's been like whatever about it, but when he has a car, that can race, he can race, blah blah blah. So whatever. On the other side of the Red Bull garage, hey, let's talk
Uh,
about El Viejo Sabroso, alias Sergio Checo Perez. What the f is going on with Checo? So, uh, going back to the sprint, I know Checo obviously did not make it out of SQ1, right? So whatever, that's not old news. Started from the pit lane, was passed in the pit lane by Franco Colapinto. Checo said, "Hey, that was on purpose. We were trying to use uh, the sprint as a free practice to kind of test out um, setups, and we needed clean air for that. So I let Franco pass. Of course, like Christian Horner hung him out to dry. Said, "Hey, when the light turns green, you go." The race for Checo was listen. The race for Checo was not any better. So I guess let me start. First of all, I'm not surprised that they did Checo dirt McGirt like that. I'm not surprised that Checo didn't respond. If Checo didn't respond when Helmut Marko was being racist towards him, I know Checo's not going to respond when Christian Horner like calls him out like that. Do you feel like he
man,
was lying when he said he did that on purpose to let Colapinto pass?
I don't think. I think he was actually trying to save face. I'll say this about Checo. I know we crap on him so many times, but this dude, I still believe like that's why I'm glad um when they had that one little part where they had all the team heads talking and Toto called out Horner talking about Checo complaining about the car. I'm like, thank you. 'Cause people have been saying that for years. Remember how people
Sure,
were like Checo's not driving the same car? I was just like,
absolutely not.
I bet you there's some type of different setup, but like Checo's doing that, and like Checo's trying to save face because I mean, I honestly believe the part that he was trying to run like experimental setup. Why not? The
Sure,
sprint, he has
sure.
nothing to gain from
I
it,
mean,
and I think it was
they changed that front wing too, right during the sprint. So I
yeah,
feel like he, yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah,
He did that a little bit, but yeah, Horner. I think at this point, like part of me is like, I bet you for me, I'm like Checo's sanity and mental health. Part of me is like, you need to leave Red Bull, but at the same time, it's lucrative for him to be there. And obviously, you talked in the podcast. It's lucrative for Red Bull to have him
mm-hmm,
there to a certain extent.
mm-hmm. Yeah, but I guess like what is also lucrative to Red Bull is having a constructors championship. But it's weird, right? Because Red Bull is one of those teams specifically that chews drivers up, spits them out, right? Because simultaneously it seems like they want a driver who's not faster than Max, but just good enough to be able to bring points, right? And admittedly, like you read it, I've read it, Checo has lasted longer than any driver who's made that many mistakes, right? Like Pierre Gasly got demoted mid-season. Alex Albon did not get renewed, right? So they're cool with it, but for whatever reason, like Checo has lasted longer than any of those guys, right? But if he retires, what I don't know is if he retires versus he is kicked off the team, Red Bull obviously will still have to pay out the final year of that contract, unless they did like a 1+1 with like a team option or something like that, right? Um, I do feel like it was on purpose, so maybe I shouldn't believe it, but I do feel like it was on purpose. But the race was nothing to right. He had a mess up on the safety car, and that was that. His race was done. Literally did a signature Lance Stroll move and drove the car straight into the gravel, and was like, "All right, I'm out. Put me in my little moped and take me back to the pits. I'm out." Uh, so I guess like it, in your mind, is Abu Dhabi the last time we will see Checo Perez in F1 or Checo Perez in Red Bull? Like, do you feel like this is it for him?
I think this is it for him at Red Bull. Like, tell the
Mm.
truth, I think like I know Horner came out and said it's up to him. But I'm just like at the end of the day,
Which is
like you brought
bullcrap,
up a
by the way.
yeah, at the end of the day, you brought up the biggest point. Yes, Red Bull's happy that Max won his fourth in a row, but Red Bull is also like, how is it that we have the number one driver and we're out of we're not even fighting for the constructors cup in the final race. We're out of it, and then Max, I believe, if Checo gets a DNF and Max gets at least, I think it's over 10 and a half points, he's gonna double up Checo's score. And that's just like one of those that they're just like, at the end of the day, you can only excuse it so much. But then like,
Sure.
what's going to be the better option? Because you can't run a one man team. I mean, obviously Max by himself could probably still be a
Literally.
top five team. Like, let's
Literally.
be real. Max by
Yes.
himself. But like you need a teammate, and that's the question. Like, who do you bring in?
So this has been a point of contention, right? So supposedly the person that they are going to bring in, it was allegedly it was going to be Franco Colapinto, but Colapinto has had some pretty terrible race. This last race, obviously, he DNF'd. That was not his fault at all. Obviously, it was because Esteban Ocon had an issue and blah, 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 this, that, and the third, right? The person that is linked right now is Liam Lawson. So that one to me doesn't make sense, right? Like, obviously, like you and I have talked about, it should be Yuki Tsunoda who gets a seat in the top team, Red Bull. Uh, Marco or Helmet Marco has been quoted as saying is like Yuki Tsunoda is not consistent enough. He still makes mistakes. Uh, yeah, exactly. But
Hmm.
the thing is, like, I'm not sure what else Yuki had to do because guess what? Like, they put, Nick DeVries for Yuki. DeVries out. Then they put Daniel Ricciardo for Yuki. Daniel Ricciardo's out. They did Liam Lawson the first time. Yuki again out qual this year, right? So they feel like what the upside is Liam Lawson, and so we're gonna give Liam Lawson a shot. And I'm just kind of like,
Hmm.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
See, it's a little weird, but whatever. Frankly, like I like Yuki, so I'm actually happy that he's not going to be uh the second Red Bull driver. Hopefully, he eventually finds his way off that team and onto another team that understands him better. But whatever, I feel like he's not inconsistent. I just feel like he's not always given like the best tools. I guess real quick then, do you feel like I mentioned Franco Colapinto briefly? So he's done. There's no chance Colapinto you think ends up on any team except for like Williams reserve.
I think he's gonna be a reserve. I think it's one of those things where he came, he found lightning in a bottle, and I just gotta remind myself he's still pretty young.
Yep.
He's a guy who they kind of got his feet wet in F1, and then we kind of saw take away this race. We kind of did see the last two races beforehand. He has struggled, but I think teams at the end of the day see potential in him. He's a guy that I wouldn't be surprised. You and I talking 4 years down the road, 5 years down the road, he's he's there getting a seat. But I don't think
Sure.
he's quite ready right now. But as a reserve, I think a lot of these teams will be happy with him as a reserve.
I think yeah, I'm not gonna lie. So like when Colapinto first came, like I was very like, yes, he's better than Logan Sargent. He's exciting. He's like the next iteration of whatever. This kid is fast. Blah 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 blah. This that and the third.
Hmm.
But ultimately, it's proven to be like fool's gold. Now that's with a caveat. All right. Williams obviously is not a rich team. Anytime they crash a car, they got to go on Craigslist and find parts for the car. They got to 3D print pieces. They got to eBay auction, whatever they got to do to find parts. So yeah, I get it. Fine. I do see Colapinto as a reserve. Unless something happens, I'm not sure. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe in 2 years he comes back, but it's like, is he going to be not racing for 2 years either? But I also don't see where he would go because he was linked to V Carb as well. But guess what? Like, I don't think Red Bull is going to pay $20 million for Franco Colapinto because I think that's the asking fee that Williams was saying. They're not going to pay $20 million to
Mm-mm.
release. Yeah,
Nah.
exactly. They might get the bargain basement Franco Colapinto, and we'll see because I guess the V Carb Isaac Hadjar has been like linked to it. So it is what it is. Full circle, coming back to it. Very sad that this is how Checo Perez's career is ending. Right, you don't want to see anybody's career end like that, but it's a cold, cold world out there. You know, I, yeah, I got nothing. Right, like I'm out of
I mean,
excuses for him.
yeah, and I mean you brought it up many times. The F1 world, it's plain and simple. What have you done for me lately? Like that's what it
What have
is.
you done for me lately? Yeah,
That's what it
and
is.
I was gonna say something, but I'm gonna leave it off the podcast. I'm gonna just say it to you after the podcast. I don't want beef. I don't want beef with my Mexican brethren. All right, that's that's it. That's all I'm gonna say. All right. So the race continues, and by the way, yes, Colapinto was out because of Ocon. So what do you think about like Ocon? Basically,
Oh my
he's
gosh.
decided he decided to leave. he decided to leave.
Yeah,
Was that the
he
best
was just
decision
like,
for Ocon, or was the Alpine just like, hey, dog, we're gonna keep giving you a crappy car, so you decide what you're gonna do?
yeah. I mean, I thought maybe he was gonna finish out because obviously we saw what happened in Brazil. We were just like, oh, hey, oh, 2-3
Sure,
finish. Let's go.
sure,
What's going
sure.
on? But then next thing you know, it's like I'm pretty sure was it turn one in this race?
It was
That's when the
yeah, it
crash
was
happened.
literally beginning of the race. Yep.
It was like right in the beginning. Like I'm just out there sitting down. I'm getting ready. I was just like, all right, let's see what's going. And I like stopped. I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah. And
And
frankly, it wasn't even Alcon's fault. So if
yeah,
you remember, Nico Hulkenberg had started the race on hards. The hards
mm. Yeah,
were
because
not grippy
I
at
think
all.
he was the only one. I think he was the only one who started on hards.
Yep. And so he started the incident, which a domino effect. Ocon's out, Colapinto's out.
Yeah.
So it's Hulkenberg's fault. But then after the race, Ocon gives that very cryptic like interview, basically saying like, "Yeah, that's it, I'm out." And like the reasoning, by the way, was like, "Yeah, we're releasing him early so that he can test with Haas early." And it's like,
Mm,
couldn't he have done that after the race or
yeah.
after like the week after the race or whatever? Anyway, so like, come on, dog, be for real. So yeah. After that, so Akon's out, and honestly, good for him. He did what was best for himself. Like Jack Doohan's gonna be in Abu Dhabi, and again, that's another one that's like Jack Doohan is gonna be like ah, I don't even know what to say. Like Jack Doohan, supposedly the rumor is that he's on a 5 race contract, because Flavio Briatore is saying like, I like Colapinto. I
Mm,
don't think I don't think Briatore is really going to say like, "Hey, let's bring in Colapinto" after what he's seen. So I think he's given Doohan a chance, but we'll see. So it's Jack Doohan. All right, now the race continues, and it's a situation where it's basically a procession, right? You've got Max in the lead, Lando in
mm.
second. You got George falling away because, of course, Mercedes pace fell off, and no one knows why Mercedes pace fell off. Who cares? Frankly,
Who knows?
whatever,
Who knows?
right? And it was very boring until I
A
forget what
side
lap
view
it was.
mirror. Oh
Yes,
my
Alex
gosh.
Albon, in his pursuit of making the faster car, lost the wind mirror. That was a wrap. Uh, it was very weird because there was a safety, then there wasn't. So it was like a double yellow, not a safety car. So it was like a double
Yeah.
yellow, then there wasn't, then there was a yellow. And so the race was allowed to continue because the mirror was, and this is the FIA's explanation, because the mirror was not on a racing line, right? And then out of left field comes Valtteri Bottas in a Hot Wheels and just
Boop.
runs over that car, or that mirror, shards of glass and fiber everywhere. Lo and behold, still no safety car. Lewis Hamilton
Oh,
runs over it, got a flat. Carlos Sainz runs over it, has
yep.
a flat. Then they decide, yes,
Now,
yes, we're gonna
that
call a safety
was,
car. Oh,
and the
oh,
commentators,
oh.
they were like 4 laps too late for that.
Well, and
That's what.
then okay, okay, and further proof that all your faves are a bunch of feds, right? During the brief yellow flag, Max
Oh
Verstappen is
man.
on the radio saying, "Hey, I don't think Lando lifted during that yellow." And sure enough, the telemetry showed Lando did not. So they gave Lando out of left, not out of left field. Just again, very, 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 very late.
Ooh.
Uh, a 10-second penalty for a drive-through, right? Which basically he had to go to the pits and then like serve that. Like he didn't have to stop. It's literally like you have to go through the pits as a 10-second drive through penalty, right? So I guess let's take it by pieces. The first one is, could you imagine if Lando and Max were still in a title fight
Oh, that would have been.
and
I'm telling you, that would have been.
Lando got the penalty?
Oh man, we would have been talking about that for. That would have been dissected for years. Because what would have happened if the championship would have been decided on that? If that championship would have been decided on that, I would have been like, here's. I mean, honestly, what I would have said is, hey, shouldn't have let it get so close. But when that happened, everyone was telling on each other. I think at one point, I think it was maybe Lando was behind. I don't know. It was a Mercedes. I don't know if it was Lewis or George, but he was behind one of them, and they're like, "Hey, did this guy brake check me? What's going on?" This guy do, and everyone. I think everyone's just angry when they had to go through the pits, and it was just a hot mess. And
Yeah.
I was just like, FIA, what is going on right now? Like I'm just
So
watching this. Go ahead, you go.
no. So here's my question: do you feel like they should have called the safety car with that uh when that mirror was in the? It wasn't on a racing line. It wasn't anywhere. When that mirror dropped, whatever, should they have called at least a VSC? So yeah, and afterwards the FIA is saying like it wasn't on a racing line. We were well within the regulations. It wouldn't have made sense to even do a virtual safety car. Uh, Agree or disagree? Should they have called something at that point?
I think when it was just there, it was fine. But as soon as Valtteri ran over it, because here's my thought, I was like, it's not on a racing line if it's just one car.
Sure.
But how did the situation happen? Multiple cars, and then hit it. I think once Valtteri ran over it, I think they should have done something at that point. That's when it should
Sure.
have been cleaning it up because
Sure.
in my head, the first thing that came through was like, there's glass. I literally just got a flat tire a few weeks ago running over glass. So I'm just like, as soon as I saw that, I was like, someone's going to get a flat tire. And guess who got it? It was Lewis. And I get to see his place just drop, 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 drop,
Pew.
drop, drop, drop. And I knew
Yep.
as soon as he dropped, already, I think Lewis was already like checked out when he was just like, the car couldn't get past
Dog.
Checo. I think he was checked out. And
Dog.
then once that happened, he's like, "Oh, forget this. I'm done.
Listen.
You're whack. You're whack. You're whack.
yo,
Don't tell me what to
yo,
do. I'm
yo,
done."
Lewis. First of all, Lewis was on one. Do you remember? Sidebar. Do you remember that movie, Head of State? Chris Rock, Bernie
Yep.
Mac.
Exactly. Yep.
You remember what? You remember when Chris Rock's brother, right? Mace Gillum is Chris Rock's character. He has his brother,
Yeah.
who's a bail bondsman out of Chicago. He gets off the train and he just starts slapping people. He's like, "Hey man, check out my CD. Hey man, check out this." And he just like, that's
Yep.
Lewis. I knew Lewis was on one where he was just he showed up to the race, and I was talking with this about this on Saturday with my friend Tasha, that Quick Stop F1 podcast. Um, Showed up no braids. Already I knew, all right, this man's over it.
Yeah.
When they were doing the national anthem and they showed Lewis Hamilton in a wave cap, I was like, now I know he's
Yep.
wearing the Ray Lewis wave cap right now. He does not care.
Mm-mm.
Case in point, when he was behind Checo and he's losing pace, he's like, yo, is something wrong with the car? How are we a second
Mm-hmm.
behind? And then that just kept like increasing, and they're like, oh, the car is unbalanced. So I was like, dog. All right.
Yeah, because
So
he
then
was like half a second, and then it was just like, nope, something's wrong. And I knew it. I was like, Lewis is already ticked off. He is gonna let him have it, and I loved it.
yo, and that's after, by the way, where he was just like, what was it? Was it Saturday that he was like, I'm just slow. I guess I don't got see, but the thing was, and here's why I'm not like pissed off or whatever about it, because I feel like, all right, you and I play basketball. You've
Hmm.
seen it. I've always seen like that old head. Not to say that Lewis is old. All right, everyone, relax.
Yeah.
That guy who's like, he's good. You know he's good because he shows up to the gym, and he's not even wearing like, he's just got sweatpants on and a sweatshirt, and
Hmm.
he's just there to ball, right? And somebody will try to talk smack to him. He's like, yeah, I'm not that good, whatever, that proceeds to bust your ass on the court. And that to me is Lewis. To me, when he said like I'm just not fast anymore, I was like, boy, shut yo. Like, he's lying. But then
And
people
then,
obviously took that as like they're writing think pieces. What's going on with Lewis? And
oh
I'm
my
like,
gosh. And then like he's just being
y'all need more
obvious.
black friends.
Because like they were asking him questions, and he was just like, "Hey, like to summarize his words, I'm just ready for the season to be over." Like he literally
Basically, he's on
just
that.
came out. He's like, "Hey, I'm out. I'm done. I'm just here." And that's I think once that happened, I could like it. I completely understand. Like at that point, I completely understand it. And then some people were like, "Oh, but look at Lando. He came back. He was all." And I'm like, "Y'all, look at his car. Look at that car McLaren had, and look how at one point I was just like, this guy's passing two cars at a time. That's how I knew. I was just like, these are not the same cars.
I I just, again, the narrative is old.
Hmm.
The fact that people took him at his word lets me know they don't have enough black friends. All right, so for starters, just do that. So obviously, you get to the race. During the race, he runs over that, gets a flat. all of that. They changed his tire. He's saying like, oh, and he got, by the way, he got a penalty 5 seconds for a false start, which, by the way, crazy how Lando Norris early in the year also did a false start and they didn't
Yeah.
call anything. Wow, that's crazy.
And you can tell Lewis knew, like Lewis did it and he was like, it's my bad.
Sorry, my bad.
Yeah.
Right. So at that point, they said, he's so far behind. He's like, "Am I a lap down now?" They're like, "Yeah, yeah, yeah." And then he's like, he got that penalty. He's like, "Hey, just retire the car." And they're like, "Hey, you got to serve it. You got to serve that 5 second penalty because if you don't, you're gonna have a 5 second penalty the next race. But we'll retire if you want." He's like, "All right, fine." He does
Hmm.
the lap. Then the team is like, "All right, retire the car." My man was like, "Nah, I'm good. I'm okay." I was like, "This guy does not care." He's
Yeah.
like, I'm over this. I'm over this. I hate you all. But he didn't say that. All right. Again, if Lewis doesn't care, I don't care. Full stop.
And like
Like,
I think that was it. Like I think he can kind of he did his thing. He made his usual like it wasn't the weekend that I wanted post. He has that already like on drafts
Doug,
everywhere.
he's got one in the chamber. You think he's getting tired of the PR sound bites?
Oh
Like,
my
he's just
goodness!
like recycling them at
Like
this point. Like,
you
y'all
and
keep
I
asking me
talked
the same
about it.
questions.
You and I said the day's gonna come where he's gonna have a tell-all book about his career, and I bet you he's gonna talk about how the end of his time at Mercedes is probably gonna be a lot different compared to how he's gonna finish his
Yes.
career off. And I
Yes.
just have a strong feeling that's coming.
Yes. 100%. So then obviously, like Lewis had a bad race, whatever. It was still better than last year. Last year he didn't finish because obviously he had an incident with George, and the team put out that whack PR video. Felt like two kids who were made to apologize by their parents, whatever.
Yeah.
But ultimately the same results. No points last year, no points this year. Whatever. I'm over it. All right, so back to the race. Lewis gets a penalty, 5 seconds. Lando gets a penalty, 10 seconds. Ends up all the way at the end, made it back up to P10, whatever, gets a point. The one thing that prevented, by the way, was McLaren winning the constructors championship. So it goes down to Abu Dhabi between Ferrari and McLaren. I guess we don't need to get deep into it. Who you got? You got McLaren or Ferrari for the constructors?
I want Ferrari to win, but I think it's going to be
Mm,
McLaren. That
100%.
that's just how I'm
100%.
viewing it.
100%. Hey, Carlos Sainz, if you're listening, just doesn't matter, dog. Win, don't win, you're not gonna reap the benefits. Do with that what you will.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, but it felt like again the talk of the race, the biggest thing was um FIA is just consistent or inconsistent, right? And I think that I want to bring up to you is MBS Mohammed Ben Sulayem, who is the president of the FIA. Recently, he has not come under fire because if he had come under fire, he would be answering for stuff. Said a couple things, or he's done a couple things. One, he's fired a bunch of stewards, longtime stewards who have been critical of him, right? And has said like, "Yeah, you're gone." You're gone, you're gone. And by the way, these people, the way these people are finding out that they're fired, it's like his representatives are messaging them, right? Cool. Uh, People say that part of the reason is because he's up for re-election as FIA president and he's trying to get rid of people who wouldn't vote for him. Okay, whatever, done. The second thing about MBS was they asked him, "Hey, George Russell and the Grand Prix Drivers Association put out a statement. Do you have a response to that?" Right? And the statement obviously was like, "Hey, don't treat us like kids. Don't like we're drivers. We deserve blah 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 blah." And MBS's response is essentially like, "Shut up." Like, I respectfully, they're drivers. They should just drive. I'm a driver too. I'm like, no, you're not. But whatever. Uh, and so I guess like that's the thing for me. He fires a bunch of people. Suddenly the stewarding is inconsistent. Um, I guess any thoughts on that? Is this man like just like
I
what is
think
he doing right now?
I think he should. I personally think he should be out because it's crazy. Because if I'm watching F1, I shouldn't even hear about the president. Like that's the thing. If I'm reading
100%.
more news about the president on a weekend, that means he's not doing his job. That's how I view that because the main news I should be reading are about the drivers because once again, people don't pay to watch bureaucracy in the sport. They pay to watch the drivers, and that's what it's about. They're the ones who
Yup.
make the money. Obviously, we know that there's billionaires involved in the sport, blah blah blah. But the drivers are the ones who bring the fun, the action. But I know the way. You and I both know corruption rules all, and I wouldn't be surprised if he gets revoted as president.
Probably, yeah. His pockets are deep. I feel that.
Yep.
So yeah, and I guess for me, it's just to do with the ego and a lot of money. It's a bunch of millionaires going up against a billionaire. It is what it is. The pockets are deep. But yeah, so race ends. Max Verstappen P1, Charles Leclerc P2, Oscar Piastri P3. By the way, Charles Leclerc is now 8 points behind Lando for first loser of the World Driver Championship. So sure, that's
He could
interesting,
have
I guess.
he could have been a lot closer if his teammate didn't pass him on the previous race.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. But we don't talk about that. I mean, Charles
Yeah.
does when he forgets to turn
Yeah.
off his radio, but we don't talk about
Yeah.
that.
Exactly.
So yeah, all in all for me, very boring race. Highlights of it include So Guan Yu getting his first points,
Yes,
finished
sir.
P8 driver of the day. Let's go.
Love it.
Wow, amazing, incredible. Uh, you got points and
Yeah.
you won't be on a team next year. So
Nope.
cool. I don't know. Like, yeah, like it's cool. Yeah, he won driver of the day, but very
Yeah.
much a forgettable race. I am looking forward to the end of the season. It'll be bittersweet, but I'm excited about next season. We got a bunch of rookies coming in. We got people changing teams. Obviously, I'm talking about Esteban. I'm joking. Obviously, Lewis to Ferrari is going to be great. Um, anyway, so wrapping up as always, and as customary on this show, we like to talk about our pariguayos and our matatan. I'm gonna give you 2 seconds to think about it. So for the Qatar Grand Prix, who are your pariguayos?
I mean, my first one got to be FIA. This
Shouts
weekend
out.
was a hot mess, and just the way
Yes.
the race was managed, just their
Terrible.
PR, everything was
All
bad for
bad.
them. All
Yes.
cylinders.
Dookie.
That is, I'm gonna
Yes.
say my. I'm not even gonna say my first one. That's my main one. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm putting all my
Yes.
chips in.
Yes. Yes. Pariguayo plus one with MBS, right?
Hmm.
So I'm just kind of like, I don't know, dog. Doesn't seem like anybody likes you, but yeah, you can still be here, I guess. For the race, who was your matatan?
I gotta give it to our boy. You named it. Our driver of the day. I believe is
So
it
Guan
Zhu Yu.
Yu. Yes, sir.
Yep.
Zo Guan Yu.
I gotta
Guan
give
Yu
him
Zo.
props.
Guan Yu Zo.
Guan Yu Zhou. I know ZHOU is normally what I see the last name
Yeah, it's
printed
kind of
there.
like it's like Yao Ming, right? Yao was
Yeah.
his yeah. You understand. You get it.
But yeah, he did. I
Uh
I gotta give him props because that car we have seen that car just not do anything all season long. And I know they're not gonna have both of they're gonna have new drivers next year. But I was just
Mm-hmm.
like, you know what? At least he was able to get these points, and he deserved it. And he had a solid drive, and that's who I'm going for.
Um, yeah. First and foremost, I don't have a Matatan for the race because, again,
That's fair.
truly a forgettable race. Actually, you know what? The George Russell Max Verstappen beef. Matatan for me for the race is
Wow.
Max Verstappen, not because he won the race. I take it all back. Matatan is Max Verstappen, not because he won the race. I don't care about all that. Matatan is because he's taking his beef to the public arena. All right,
Mm.
a little precursor to the season's end.
Yes.
Yes, it's not really a
Yes.
rivalry. All right, it's not really a
Hey,
rivalry because
hey,
George Russell has three. George Russell has 3 wins
hey.
to
I'm
Max
just I'm
Verstappen's
just nodding my
63.
head out
So
here. I'm just nodding my head out here like Emperor Palpatine. Let the hate fuel you. Let the hate.
yes, search your
That's how I feel like.
feelings.
Yeah, that's why I'm just like, yes, let it fuel you.
So we'll see. George Russell says he could take the fight to Verstappen. Okay, big dog. Let's see. Whatever. Um. So yeah. Are you looking forward to Abu Dhabi?
In a weird way, I am and I'm not. I'm looking forward to it
Mm,
because Love watching the races. Last race, Lewis's last race with Mercedes. But at the same
Amen.
time, I am preparing myself to be bummed out with how Lewis's last race with Mercedes is going to go.
Oh,
If
100%.
if he gets a DNF, I will not be surprised. I'm going to tell you that right now. If that car gets retired, don't even color me surprised. It'll be the most
Nope.
obvious thing. I'll be like, well, that's it.
Yeah. Watch him. Wouldn't it be delicious if he got a
If
race win? It's not gonna happen, but that would just
yeah,
be like
oh,
a
that'll be
so
great.
yeah, but I don't care. It's time for him to move on. It's time. It will be interesting to see what happens next year with a more consistent car from a team who understands the ground effect era,
Yeah,
and see what happens with that team and see what happens with Mercedes. But
absolutely.
all right, man. But other than that, that is it for this episode. As always, please comment, like, subscribe. If you leave comments, if you subscribe, leaving comments is gonna make this viewable and visible to other people. So comment, like, subscribe. As always, tell your tios, your tias, papis, mamis, abuelos, abuelas, vecinos, vecinas for the Monoplaza F1 podcast. I'm Emilio Tre. That was Elkin. Peace.